We both had a very, very dear friend, in a way we called a mentor, whose name was Antony Kingsmill. Tony Tangerini sometimes signed himself. He was about 4'6", handsome in a way, hermaphroditic in appearance, and he never seemed to have to shave for some reason. He had this baby-like countenance. He smoked like a trooper. He drank like a fish, but intelligence kept him on his feet. Intelligence and the fact that he was an artist with a capital A. Leonard adored him. Well, we sat down at the table and we got into conversation. Leonard and I, we both listened to Antony because despite all the other things, which I suppose could be labelled faults, he was intelligent and he made sense in everything he said, even if he didn't make sense in everything he did. Anyway, he was an artist, of course, with a capital A, like I say, but not the most disciplined of artists, you could say. So directly anyone gave him a little loot to do a painting, he'd drop his paint and brush, fold up his easel and hit the town to celebrate. And of course, the people who had propositioned him would have to supply a little more for him to continue, you see. So in this way, after a few dabs of brush, he would have a break in between, which until he got enough money for another dab of brush. And Leonard, of course, would appreciate all this. So he used to help Antony out too, of course, because of his admiration for him and the fact that he was an intelligent man. So whenever Antony was hungry or needed a little money, of course, Leonard was only too happy to pass it over. Well, it came to that point where Antony wanted Leonard to have a painting, and the best painting, in his opinion. So he approached Leonard one day and offered Leonard the painting. And Leonard was happy to accept, but of course insisted on paying for it. And Antony never refused. When it came to being a bit short of cash again, he'd go around to Leonard's house, take the painting off the wall, and it was sold to others, and Leonard bought it back several times. Accepting the fact that Antony used to say, Leonard, an artist's work never really belongs to anyone else but the artist. You realize that, don't you, Leonard? And of course, Leonard had to agree with that. We move on a bit, and Antony found that his wife had deserted him for another man, a younger man. And then Antony got word a year or so later that she was dying of cancer. A young woman in her 30s. He was, of course, brought to his knees by her death and was sort of fading away himself at that point. I remember him saying to me, "I've got to get off this fucking island, Donald." And I said, "Antony, how can you manage that? Wait at least until you're strong enough to move and on your feet." He said, "Can't promise you, Donald. I've got to get off." Anyway, I helped him a bit. Others helped him too, to help him survive. But I walked into the port one day to see little Antony sitting at the table with Leonard. He had a clean shirt on. He'd combed his hair. I think he was wearing a sort of blue blazer. And he had a white handkerchief in the top pocket, I remember. And he's sitting there quite excited, talking to Leonard. And as I was passing by, he called out to me. He said, "Donald, you've got to come here and join us. Leonard's back." And I sat down then with a bit. And I said, why are you all spruced up? Are you going somewhere? Donald, he said, I'm off to Paris to see the Gauguin exhibit. I said, you are? Rather surprised. Leonard sits there listening and looking and smiling a bit. After a while, Antony burst into tears. He said, I'm leaving, Donald. I can't take it anymore. Then he rushed off to the toilets to spruce himself back up again. And I said to Leonard, how can he be leaving, Leonard? He's got no money. Did you give him some money? Are you financing the trip? And Leonard shook his head. He said, no, Don. I said, well, how? What's happened? He said, I don't know, he said. It's a mystery to me too, he said. But I noticed the painting has gone off the wall again. Well, we both said goodbye to him. We watched him go up the gangplank to the ferry boat. I remember he turned at the top, took his white handkerchief out, and he waved it to both of us. Sailed away to Paris to see the Gauguin exhibit. I did ask when would he be back. He said, I can't promise, Don. Anything could happen from here on out. So I think Leonard and I went and had a news out and discussed it a little bit more. And after that, it was all up to the gods.